Welcome back to the next step in the grid trading journey. I've started work on some of the suggestions that I've received, and when I started, I realized that something I had done very deliberately in the very first stages is actually a problem now. And let me show you, it is in the leg. So I'm looking at version 1.001. So this is after the MT4 conversion. And the thing that is the problem are statements like this. If position type buy, if position type sell, if type buy, and so on. These are throughout the code. I actually put them there deliberately because I thought it might be a little bit easier to read. But as I've been working on some of the other changes, I realized that while it might be easier to read, it's actually harder to use. In my own code, I never do this. And so what I'm going to do today, rather than develop any new customizations to the grid trader, I'm just going to remove all of that and make the code a bit cleaner. And then we're ready in the next video to move on with some of the suggested improvements to the grid trader. Now, the first thing I'm going to do here, let me just open this in the navigator. I want to update this from version 1.001. Now, I have already created version 1.002. You might have seen that in an earlier video, and that was where I implemented a trend filter. Now, that's not showing here because I've gone back to the version 1. I'm going to now update this, and this will be version 1.003. So as I usually do, I'll just open that folder, copy the 1.001, make that a 3, close. There is version 1.003. I'll close this. And then if I change that to 1.003, magically when I open up main, I have to change this to 1.003, change the version number. But this, if I show in Navigator, is in the 1.003 folder. Okay, so that takes care of moving to a new version number. Step number 1, these files that I created in trade, the position info custom, symbol info custom, and trade custom, I'm going to put all of this into include so that they can be used in other projects if you wish. To do that, I simply go to include. I already have a folder here called Orchard. Has nothing in here. This readme.txt is empty. I just put that there so that when I check into Git, it maintains the folder. If the folder's empty, I can lose it sometimes. So I'm going to just move this trade from here into Orchard. And that means that in this config file for version 1.003, instead of these being relative references, they are going to become Orchard. And just to make sure I've done that correctly, I will go back to the GridTrader MQ5 and compile. I'm not getting any compiler errors, so it's finding these files now in include. Now the next step is to actually get onto the leg file. And I'm also going to move some of that into standard code. So I'm going to create another folder here under Orchard in the include. New folder, I'm just going to call it expert. And I'm going to put the default leg class in there. And to do that, I'm going to make a copy of this leg class. I'm just going to drag it and control drop. There it is. I'm going to change the name of this. It's no longer for Grid Trader. This is just the leg base class now. So I'll change the class name. A lot of this code will be deleted as well because it's relevant only to the Grid Trader, but I'll just change that everywhere for now. I no longer include config and input because this is a standard, but I will include object. And now this is class C leg base public C object. These custom classes don't exist. Obviously, there's no include here. Now I want to include the files here, and I'm going to include them as a relative reference rather than absolute. So I'm using the quotation marks, going up one level, So now I'm including the position info, symbol info, and trade. That means these lines all work. I don't need a position size, or I do need a position type and an order type. I don't need the level size because that's relevant to the grid trading. But these two lines can be part of a standard leg base class. I can remove all of those because they relate to the grid trader. I'm just going to change this to an integer to make it a little more generic. So the type is now an integer. Take out that comment. And because the type is an integer, I need to make that enum position type. It would compile without that, but it just saves getting a compiler warning message. And I'll just use type there as well. And I don't have recount because that's part of the grid trader. I will leave the on tick here, but I will just leave that check for symbol info refresh and then remove the rest. And the close all and open trade, I'll remove those. I'll remove the recount. If I've done that correctly, I should be able to do a compile on the leg base, and that works. Now that compile was, of course, just to check the syntax. It didn't create any code. So now I can go back to main and I can open the leg here. So now I've included the leg base class. I inherit leg from leg base, and that means I don't need these lines. I don't need the position type or the order type, and I'm not sure what that line's doing there. I think that would have been a leftover from some other piece of code. Make that an int. And I'm calling in the constructor, I'm calling the constructor of the base class, passing that type through. I don't need the symbol info refresh. And I don't need to set the position type or the order type. On tick, I've still got everything here because I'm not doing any kind of inheritance or virtual functions here. I'm just going to use this on tick. I think that takes care of everything to do with inheritance. Let me just, yep, that goes through without errors. So I don't have any syntax errors in here at least. Now let's get on with removing these tests for position type. And I'm going back to the base class for this to start. And this is why I created a base class. I'm going to add a series of functions that I'll use to effectively take out the need to put those conditions throughout the code. So the first is a greater than or equal to function. So typically you have to perform greater than or less than depending whether you're buying or selling. So a better price for a buy is greater than, a better price for a sell is less than. I'm going to try to replace that with just this single function, which is GE, or greater than or equal to, and then I'll get onto a GT greater than, an LE less than or equal, and an LT less than. So all this is saying, if the position type is a position type buy, then I'm returning value 1 is greater than or equal to value 2, because the type buy is standard increasing progression. But if it's not a position type buy, it must be a type sell, and then I'm returning value 2 is greater than or equal to value 1, just reversing that. So that takes care of a single function that will give me greater than or equal to, and depending on the position type that the class is set to, I automatically get a better or worse price value. Let me just make sure I didn't make an error in that line. It still compiles. And now I'll just duplicate this for the greater than, because that's a fairly simple change. I just have to take out these equal signs for the greater than function. And now I can duplicate both of these for the less than or equal to and the less than. And in that case, all I have to do is change the greater than signs to less than. So now I've got 4 simple functions that I can use for all of the greater than or less than comparisons, regardless of whether I'm in a buying or a selling mode. Next, I want to do some math, depending whether I'm buying or selling. So I'm using the same comparison. If I'm buying and I want to add something to a price, then that's fairly simple. It's just value 1 plus value 2. But if I'm selling and I want to add something to a price, so I want to get a better price on a selling direction, I actually want to subtract. So it's just value 1 minus value 2. Now I can duplicate that because I also want to subtract. And so this might be, I would add, perhaps if I'm calculating a take profit price, I would pass in the price and the size of the take profit, and that would give me the better price, that is the take profit price. And if I'm doing a stop loss, then I would use the subtract. So I would subtract value 2 from value 1. So you have to read these as add function is value 1 plus value 2 in the direction of the trade, and the subtract function is value 1 minus value 2 in the direction of the trade, opposite to the direction of the trade. And that's a very simple modification, simply reversing these 2 signs. But now I need one more function. And you can test this for yourself by putting in real numbers. But subtracting a value from a price is one function. But if I'm in a selling mode, getting the difference between 2 prices will be not the same answer. I didn't put that very well. Maybe if I explain. If, for example, I'm in a selling mode and I want to take a price of 1 and add 0.1 to that. So, or rather, I want to subtract 0.1 from that. Then my value of 1 plus 0.1 will give me a value of 1.1. And if I'm in a selling mode, that might be my stop loss for something where I've entered at a price of 1. If I want to calculate the difference between a price of 1 and a price of 1.1, then obviously this function is going to give me a value of 2.1. If I'm in a buying mode, it's a little different because then I would pass in 1.1 and 1, and I would get a difference of 0.1. But in a selling mode, 1.1 plus 1, 2.1, it's just wrong. So I need one more function that will always give me the difference between 2 prices. Now, as I said, for a buy mode, it's exactly the same as the subtract function. But in a selling mode, it's just the reverse, value 2 minus value 1. So remember here, if I had 1.1 and 1, I would get 2.1, but in this function, if I want to get the difference between a price of 1.1 and a price of 1, and remember we're in a selling mode, so 1.1 is a higher value, so the difference is a negative answer, then that would be 1 minus 1.1, which gives me minus 0.1, as in the price is 0.1 behind. Just 2 more functions that I need now so that I don't need to worry about the position type. So price close, as you already know, if I'm buying, then the close price is the bid price and the open price is the ask price. And if I'm selling, then it's the reverse. So I just want a price close function. So the close price for a buy is bid. Do a compile to make sure I don't have a syntax error. That's good. Now with those functions, I'm all set to go through this code. I don't want to capture the ask and the bid prices now, but I'll just delete that. I don't need this position type by test. What I'll do, I'll type the new function. So my new function now, I've actually captured price close here from that price close, and I'll show you in a moment why I'm doing that rather than just use the function. But if the closing price is greater than or equal to the exit price, which is exactly the same as this statement and the same as this statement. So I can just delete that. But then I'm calling close all, and in both cases I'm passing in the closing price. So I just put, and that's the reason I captured it rather than call the function, because this simply saves me calling the function twice. I just call it once here and tidies up that piece. I'm doing the same here. So here I'm just going to remove that. I still want the if mcount is equal to 0, or the open price is less than or equal to the entry price. And then I'm going to open the trade at the price open. In the close all function, again, I've got these tests for position type. I'm going to replace those. Let me just change this price to price close, just to make things a little easier to follow. So instead of this statement, I've now changed to if the closing price is greater than or equal to the opening price of that position plus the size of one level. So now I can get rid of that. And then it's just mtrade position close ticket. I no longer need continue because that's the only statement I have in the loop, and I can get rid of that. Open trade, I'm just going to change this to price open just to keep it neat. In recount, I still have a count. I have an entry price and an exit price. I'm going to remove these, and I'm just going to, because I don't want a high and a low now, I want to know the price of the trade that's the best in the direction of the trading, or the price that's the worst in the direction of the trading. So for a buy, the worst would be the lowest price, and the best would be the highest price. You might consider the highest price is the worst because you're further away. I'm just looking at it in the direction of the trade. So the one that's in the lead and the one that's at the tail. I'm going to call it head and tail. So what I'm going to do here, I'll type the new statement. So if the head price is equal to 0, then I haven't found a trade yet. Or if the current position's open price is greater than the head price, then I just set that as the new head price. I guess I could have shortened this up. Let me just add a little bit more efficiency here. Instead of calling the function multiple times. And I do the same thing for the tail. If the tail price is equal to 0, or in this case, it's less than, so the open price is less than the tail, then I found a new tail price. Get rid of those two lines. And down here again, I have another test of the type. I can replace that. If mcount is greater than 0, it means I found something and I have a head and a tail price. So the entry price is the tail minus the level size. That's when the price falls below the bottom of the buying leg or goes above the top of the selling leg by one level, then I'll open up another trade. And that duplicates the exit price where I'm going to take the profit on the trade or close the trade. Just make sure I haven't made any typing errors. Well, I have. Unexpected, that's because I missed a bracket here. That's better. That takes care of everything to do with making sure this deals without having to have those conditional statements for buy and sell. They're buried in these GE and LT and LE functions, but it does save me having to worry about them, and it makes the rest of the code much easier. The reason I like this, I don't have duplicated code. So I don't have the statements for closing. I don't have the statements for opening duplicated. It's too easy once you duplicate code to make a modification in one place and miss the other, or to forget about the direction that you're trying to set them and use a minus sign instead of a plus sign. By doing this, I'm writing the same code and I don't need to worry about whether I'm buying or selling. Now let me just go back and compile the grid trader, so version 1.003, because sometimes you find errors when you compile the whole program rather than just compiling one part. And now I will quickly go to MetaTrader and run this and compare it with the base. I still have the base here, which was compiled at 1.00, and that's going to be my benchmark. Now I've run the test on the base, grid trader base. We can see that the graph is the familiar graph that we have, and the back test, profit of 5,021. If I now change that to grid trader, which is the new version, and start again. So that has run. There is the familiar graph, and 5,021, the same result. So that wasn't to demonstrate any improvements to the technique. That was just to demonstrate that I'm getting the same result. So those code changes haven't caused any problems or any changes in the trading. And that's going to be my code going forward. So let's go back to look at the code again. So version 1.003 will be the base code that I'll use in the next video, where I'll implement another one of the suggestions for improving the actual grid trader. Thank you for watching. Remember, like and subscribe and click the bell and you'll be notified when we release new videos. Thank you.